I don't know if I should laugh or cry, but the Oregon Ducks are 8-1. Hello everyone, welcome into another episode of the Soder Report. My name is Kyle Soder. I'm the host here on this channel. Thank you very much, all of you, for tuning in. Today we're going to be talking about the Oregon Ducks and their game against the Iowa Hawkeyes. So there's going to be a lot to get to in this game. I'm going to get to injuries. I'm going to get to Will Stein. I'm going to get to Dante Moore. I'm going to get to the game just in general. And then I'm going to get to what we should be watching moving forward from this game. But first, before I get there, please like and subscribe to this channel. We've been getting a lot of views lately, and we had a lot of you that were subscribing. That's slowed down a little bit. So please, if you're watching, if you enjoy my content, please subscribe. All right. Now that the housekeeping is over, let's get to the Oregon versus Iowa game. There was a lot of talk over the past 2 weeks because we had a bye week, Iowa had a bye week, and the recency bias from the media seemed to be Oregon struggling to beat Oregon struggling to beat Wisconsin, and Iowa cleaning Minnesota's clock. So the media sat and digested that for the previous 2 weeks. And I think a lot of Oregon fans fell for the same thing. They fell for the recency bias. A lot of people did. Here on this channel, I was saying that I expect the Oregon Ducks to win this game. Now, that was before I found out about DeCorian Moore's injury, Kenyon Sadiq's injury, Alex Harkey's injury. But I was going into this game expecting Oregon to win this game, predicting that they would. And they did, but there was a lot of talk the last 2 weeks that Oregon hasn't beaten anyone. Their best win is against Northwestern. Iowa is a really good football team. Iowa and Oregon have a common opponent in Indiana, and Indiana beat Iowa by 5, and they beat Oregon by 10, so Iowa's going to win this game. That was the whole message coming into this game, is Oregon's on high upset alert. This is going to be a rainy game. Oregon's not going to be able to play Iowa's game. This is playing directly into the hands of the Iowa Hawkeyes. And Oregon went in, and despite everything, Oregon gets it done. It wasn't pretty, but it was a win. And they're getting a lot of credit for it right now. I'm interested to see how this win ages over time. But they're getting a ton of credit for this game now. And it's so refreshing to go back and just stick it in the faces of everyone that was saying that Iowa was going to win this game, and Oregon's overrated. And Oregon is what was the phrase? Paper tiger? Something like that. Everyone was calling Oregon frauds. And today, they went into Koenig Stadium in a monsoon. They played Iowa's game. They played directly into their game plan, and they out-Iowa'd Iowa, which was impressive. But there's a lot that we need to unpack from this game because it wasn't the most impressive game. And there are some a lot of things that need to be cleaned up going forward. And I'm going to be here and critique the game a little bit, critique some of the game plan, critique some of the execution, and talk about what this game means for the future. So I wanted to start off by saying a win is a win. It was very impressive. I'm very proud of what the Oregon Ducks were able to do today, because I don't want this to be a gloomy episode. Oregon won the game, and that's the thing that matters most. A win is a win. But this team has a long way to go. But let's start out with the injuries first, because I think going forward, the injuries are the biggest storyline from this game. The injuries are the most concerning. They're the most concerning component of the future of this team. Because if this team doesn't have Decorian Moore, doesn't have Kenyon Sadiq, I don't know if they'll be able to make a run. I don't think they'll be able to make a run, win out the rest of the season, and get to the college football playoff. I think they need both of those guys. And I think they need Alex Harkey as well. I think, in my opinion, Alex Harkey is the best tackle on this team right now. So they need those three guys. So I'm just going to go through and tell you the rumors that I have heard about these injuries. The first one being Kenyon Sadiq. The official Dan Lanning just said it was lingering issues. When I think about lingering issues, I think back to the Rutgers game. If you remember, in the Rutgers game, Kenyon Sadiq had 2 touchdowns. And one of them was a ball that was thrown a little bit high from Dante Moore. And Kenyon Sadiq needed to jump up, catch the ball, and then he landed really hard on his hip. He came off the field. He was down for a little bit. He limped off the field, and I think they sat him down from there. I can't remember for certain, but he got a little bit banged up in that Rutgers game. And a few days later, a week later, obviously, they play Wisconsin in what was a very physical matchup. That was a monsoon as well. So I wonder if the lingering is that hip that he initially sustained in the Rutgers game, and it just didn't get a chance to heal. That could be totally wrong. He could have done something during the bye week or had something come up in the Wisconsin game that he just never healed from. But that's the first place that my mind went to with that injury. It sounds like he was really close to being able to be active for this game. According to Dan, Kenyon Sadiq was actually begging him to play in this game, but he just wasn't cleared by the training staff. So hopefully he's back next week for Minnesota. Next with Decorian Moore. This one is the most interesting of all of these injuries, because we got a report the day before the game, and people were saying that it was some sort of ACL injury. Now, a lot of people took that and said, oh, it's an ACL tear. That was never reported, but it was reported that it was an ACL injury. And then that post was taken down very quickly. It wasn't up for a long time. It was taken down. So we get reports today that say that DeCorian Moore's injury is not expected to be season ending. So it's not an ACL tear if that's the case. I think maybe it's some sort of sprain to a ligament. Maybe it's a MCL sprain or something along those lines. But it sounds like he's going to miss probably 3-ish weeks or so. It's just an educated guess based on what injuries to the knee are not season ending but could keep you out for at least a week. It's just a guess, but that's sort of what I would expect. I wouldn't really expect him back against Minnesota. I wouldn't expect him back against USC. Hopefully he can be back for Washington. So the college injury reports aren't detailed at all, and they're not required to be. Dan Lanning takes that opportunity to get a competitive advantage over his opponents. But it also leaves us here speculating on what this injury could possibly be. Alex Harkey had an ankle injury. This one was interesting because last night it was reported that it was a concussion, actually. And then today, Dan Lanning reports that it's an ankle injury and he got rolled up on in practice. So, again, we'll see what happens. It doesn't sound super serious. It doesn't sound like he got an ankle sprain or something like that. Hopefully he can play against Minnesota as well. With DeCorian Moore being out for multiple weeks, I presume, Kenyon Sadiq should be back pretty soon. Alex Harkey should be back pretty soon. But with DeCorian Moore likely missing a few weeks, I think it's extremely important that Evan Stewart gets back. We remember Evan Stewart. We haven't thought about him in a while. Well, I haven't talked about him for a while, but there's been a lot of buzz around social media that Evan Stewart is expected to return from a patellar tendon in sometime in November. And in my opinion, that's perfect timing. If he could get back next week against Minnesota, he's not going to be the Evan Stewart we remember from last year. But he can get in there, he can get some game reps. Against USC, he's probably not going to be the Evan Stewart we remember, but he can start getting up to game speed. And then probably against Washington, he's not going to be the Evan Stewart we remember. But hopefully he starts making some progress and getting back to game speed. And then you get to the college football playoff, hopefully. And by that time, he should be integrated into your passing game. He should have started building rapport with Dante Moore. He should have established himself as a number one target. And hopefully he's not just back to return to play, but he's back to return to performance. There's a big difference there. Someone can be playing in the game, but not playing the way they usually play. So I would hope that Evan Stewart comes back this week. Do I know if he's going to be back? I have no idea. I just know that the reports say sometime in November he could come back. And the longer his absence goes on, the more I think he's not going to be a factor come college football playoff time. If he's, like, for example, if his first game back is against Washington, he's going to be super rusty that game. And then he's going to have 2 weeks of watching the conference championships, the Army-Navy game. He'll be practicing with the team, but it's not the same as playing in games with Dante Moore and blocking against other opponents or trying to beat man coverage against another corner. So I really hope Evan Stewart gets back as soon as possible, because I still think there's hope he could return close to performance by the time the college football playoff comes around. And each week that goes by, he's going to be farther and farther from return to performance by the time those games come around. Okay. Now let's talk briefly about Will Stein and Dante Moore. I spent a lot of time on those injuries, so I'm going to try to get through these quickly. This game opened up with 3 straight pass plays. It was a downpour, and there wasn't a lot of wind on the field, but it was obvious the conditions were not ideal for throwing and catching a football. We got a great example of that on Iowa's long snapper and punter. Yet, and everyone knew this coming into the game. Everyone had seen the weather report. They had marked it down. Everyone who talked about this game talked about what the weather was going to be. And seeing that, it's common sense that whoever runs the ball better is going to win the football game. So, all of that being said, Will Stein starts the game with 3 straight passes. And it was frustrating. It was a really frustrating opening script to a game that was going to have conditions not really suitable for throwing the football. Now, I'll talk about players' execution in just a second, but in my opinion, that's not setting your players up for success. And in the past, I haven't had any issue with Will Stein in the past. But this year, I just find myself questioning him over and over and over again. I questioned him after the Indiana game. I applauded him after the Penn State game. I thought that his game plan against Penn State was flawless. He didn't put up many points, but he babied Dante Moore into the game. He got him comfortable. He didn't let Dante Moore lose that game. He gave him easy throws, easy completions. I thought that Penn State game was perfect. But the Indiana game, where he failed to feature DeCorian Moore and Kenyon Sadiq, in the Wisconsin game, where he failed to feature Kenyon Sadiq and DeCorian Moore, and then this game where he starts out the game in a downpour where you don't have your best 2 pass catchers. You start the game out with 3 straight passes, all 3 incompletions. So I thought that was a frustrating way to start the game. And they had good field position too. They were at the 49-yard line. They got that ball at the 49. So you just need a first down. You need like 15 yards and you're in field goal range. So I felt like that was a missed opportunity to seize momentum immediately, take control of the game. they did it anyway, but they did it at the hands of the long snapper snapping the ball 5 feet over the punter's head. Another thing I found questionable was when they were down in field goal range. I think it was their third drive of the game. They were up at that point 12-7, I believe. Maybe they were up 9-7 at that time, but it was a 3rd and long. They were in field goal range. And I thought to myself, all right, just the one thing you can't have here is an interception. Maybe you go with the screen pass. Maybe you go with the tight end screen, bubble screen, whatever. Just a high percentage play to get a few yards and just play for the field goal here since points are at a premium. Instead, the play that is dialed up is a seam route all the way in the end zone, 30 yards down the field, 20 yards down the field, something like that, to Cooper Perry, who is your replacement's replacement. And he lets the defensive back undercut the ball, and no one blames Cooper Perry because, I mean, what do you really expect him to do? He's not a veteran player. This is some of his first game action all year. And it gets intercepted in the end zone. So you leave 3 points out on the field. You give Iowa the ball. I felt like that was a bad play call in that spot. I felt like I know Oregon fans get really frustrated with all the screens and stuff. Today, screens were a good thing. And they were a good thing because you have a quarterback who doesn't really look like he's comfortable throwing in the rain. I've been talking about this for a few weeks now. If you've been listening in regularly, you'll know you would have been watching for this. You would know that I've been talking about this and I've told you to watch for this. Dante Moore today was 13 of 21 for 112 yards, no touchdowns, 1 interception. The broadcast made sure to tell all of us that there was no wind in the stadium today. So it was just rain. It was just throwing a wet football. And there was a lot of rain. But it seemed pretty obvious to me that Mark Gronowski was able to throw the football a lot better than Dante Moore was. And when Iowa's quarterback is throwing the ball better than your quarterback, then you are in trouble. So I think that it's no longer just a concerning trend at this point. I would be willing to say that Dante Moore is not good in the rain. I'd be willing to say that Dante Moore struggles when it rains. And I'll be checking the weather report before every single game for the rest of the year because I feel super uncomfortable if Dante Moore has to throw the ball in the rain. I'd feel super uncomfortable in week 13 playing Washington at their place if it's raining. So it's concerning. It is definitely concerning that you have to check the weather report to see how good your team's chances are of winning. They were able to get this one because they ran the ball so well. But it was not comfortable. It was not convincing. It was not enjoyable, to be completely honest. It was it was 3 hours of torture, it felt like. Okay. Now let's just get to the game as a whole. I felt like in the first half, Oregon really controlled and dictated the terms of how the game is going to be played. They controlled the line of scrimmage. They stopped the run for Iowa. And Mark Gronowski hadn't really figured out how to throw the ball until the very end of the first half. And frankly, I felt like the score being 12-7 was misrepresentative of the game that had been happening on the field. I sort of felt like the game there should have been a wider margin between the teams. There should have been more separation. Because I felt like Oregon dominated that first half. Now in the second half, I felt like that switched. I felt like Iowa really dominated the second half. They really dictated to Oregon how the game was going to be played in the second half. But overall, on the game as a whole, Oregon ran for 7 yards per carry. And another point about Dante Moore struggling in the rain, I forgot to say this earlier. I'm going to give him credit. Don't worry. I'm going to give him credit here in a second. But prior to that final drive, in the second half, Oregon had attempted 2 passes, which to me says that the coaching staff didn't really seem to trust him throwing in the rain. The coaching staff decided that their best chance to win this game was to cycle through their 3 running backs and run the ball every single play. All right, let me give Dante some credit now. I'm not going to go as far to say that Dante Moore had a Heisman moment in this game, but he made some incredible plays. He had that 47-yard run in the third quarter, and that last drive was incredible. He had all the pressure in the world on him. Koenig Stadium was loud at that point. The Iowa Hawkeyes had taken the lead. The rain was pouring down, and Koenig was loud. It was alive, and all the momentum in the world was over on the Iowa Hawkeyes sideline. And what Dante Moore does is he leads his team down the field. There were a couple of great runs, but he leads his team down the field, and he throws a perfect pass to Malik Benson to put them into field goal range. He could not have put that ball in a better spot. There was no other spot to put that football. He put it in the perfect spot. He made the perfect throw in that situation. Completely cold. He had only thrown 2 passes all second half. And he made it happen on that drive. He leads them into field goal range. Atticus Sappington kicks a 39-yard field goal, the most stressful 39-yard field goal I had waited for in a very long time. And Oregon wins the game. I'll be honest, when Iowa had gotten down to the 9-yard line, when they were down 9-15, 9 to 10. 15 to 10. 15 to 10. They were when they got down to the 9-yard line. I thought Oregon was losing the game. But Dante Moore leads them down the field, and Atticus Sappington makes the field goal. I was so stressed out. And Oregon wins the game. They're 8-1. They're going to jump up a spot in the college football playoff ranking because BYU lost today by a wide margin. And all is well. All is well. A win is a win. For all the critiques I had of that game, a win is a win. They ran the ball very well today. And the throws that they needed Dante Moore to make, he made in crunch time. He made those throws. He made those plays. So, all the credit in the world to Oregon on this day, where a lot of people were picking against them. A lot of people said that they couldn't win this kind of game. They did. And I don't want to hear any talk for the next week that they haven't beat a ranked opponent, because they just did. And Iowa might drop out of the top 25 after this. I don't care. Oregon put them out. Or Oregon beat them. That's why they're not a top 25 team. They might stay in. They'll probably stay in. But it's just been so annoying to hear that Oregon hasn't beaten anyone. And that's going to get quiet now. Going forward, next game is against Minnesota at Autzen Stadium. Minnesota was on a bye this week. The game will be played on Friday. So, short week for Oregon. It does concern me because Iowa's offense ran 61 plays. And how many of those were run plays? Let's see. Mark Gronowski had 18 attempts. So if they ran 61 plays, that would be 43 runs, if I'm not mistaken. Math is hard to do on the fly on a podcast. But I believe they ran the ball 43 times out of 61 plays. So that defense is probably going to be pretty beat up and tired. Luckily, it's the worst of their remaining opponents in Minnesota, and it's at Autzen Stadium. So Minnesota's going to have to travel out west. But the fatigue does concern me a little bit. And I'll have to check the weather report before the game. But I think they can get it done this week against Minnesota. Again, it might not be their greatest game. But going forward, the most important thing is they go 3-0 through this last stretch. Now, do I think they can do it? Washington just lost to Wisconsin, which they're not doing us any favors there. We needed Washington to be ranked as high as possible. USC is going to play Iowa this upcoming week. So hopefully USC can get that done. And then we have that ranked matchup coming up in the future. I think they can beat USC. I'm confident they can beat Minnesota. That Washington game is still a little bit scary, but I think they should be able to get that done. So, do I think they can go 11-1? Yes, I think they can. I still expect that. What would I predict to end the season? But prior to this game, I would have said it was more likely that they finish 11-1. Now I think it's sort of a coin flip. I come out of this game feeling slightly less confident about the ceiling of this team, or I should really say the floor of this team, than I did before the game started. So I'll still predict them to finish 11-1, but this game doesn't inspire more confidence than I had before the game. But great win. All of us should go on Twitter and shove it in every single Iowa fan's face. We should go back, keep the receipts, and send them to the DMs of the broadcasters who are saying that Oregon is fraudulent and their best win is against Northwestern and they're not that good. Let's go ahead and do it because we deserve it. So, you guys all have a great night. It's Victory Sunday tomorrow, and I'll see you guys later.